As I said, I wanted to have this conversation from a perspective of a story, particular stories that I had that I'd like to share with you. When I was a young man, in my earlier days, I encountered a few brothers that opened my eyes, let's say. And what I would like to say, first of all, is in this black manosphere space as black men, there are certain pillars, things that most men hold as foundational to themselves. One of those pillars are that women are, or the women that we engage in too much sex with multiple partners, lose the ability to bond with one man long term and to stay committed. Let me rephrase that. One of the pillars are that women that engage in too much sex with multiple sex partners lose the ability to bond with one man long term and staying committed in a relationship. Two, she's not moldable, or a woman that is unmoldable to the man that she's going to be with as a husband, and potentially cannot be loyal to one man. And three, the things that normally eliminate a woman from being chosen as a wife, which we all know to a large degree tends to do with some type of body count or a woman's history, sexual past. So today I want to examine this question from another perspective. Can a man have too much sex that he pollutes himself from being a good husband or a father? And I'm talking about diversity of sex, not just a lot of sex with a few women, one or two women. I'm talking about men who truly test the boundaries of sex, all types of sex, really being out there in the streets, as you would say as well, for men. Now, some men say more sexual experience, the more sexual experience a man has, is better that he's prepared when he gets a wife or when he's married. I mean, like, that's a thing that we say as men. And I've also heard many men say they don't want no virgin because they don't have time to be teaching no virgin about sex. So this is why I wanted to have this conversation, because for men who strongly or who have a strong proclivity for a lot of sex, could he be a good husband to a modest woman? Or would a woman who we would call a 304 be a more suitable wife for him? The first story goes into an encounter I had, and he was a very good buddy of mine for a while back in the 80s. We used to work together. But I'm not sure if anyone in the audience may be familiar with this spot. There was a club called the Red Parrot in New York City. It was a hot spot, especially Thursday, Fridays. I never really went there on the weekends because I went to different places. But during the week, happy hour, after work, spot turned up. And I had a buddy who had a very salacious sexual appetite. I mean, just uncurbable. A real ladies' man, some people would say. One day we went to the Red Parrot, right? We were having drinks, having a little fun, trying to scoop girls, as young men do. This was back in my early 20s. And he was dancing it up with this girl, kissing on her, feeling all over her, having a good time on the dance floor. And it was four of us together. So me and my other buddies, we were standing at the bar having drinks. And that night, As we saw him dancing and kissing up on this girl, we were like, "Yo, you see who's dancing with?" So we started laughing. And I mean, you know the type of laugh when you laugh, but you're really not laughing or you're trying to hold it back, that feeling of guilt, but at the same time, it's too funny to hold back. I mean, it's your boy, but what's happening is not something that you can really withhold. So they were dancing on the floor for about 20 minutes, maybe a half hour or so, and he's having a good time with that girl. So when he came back to the bar and he started bragging about, the girl, he got a number and what was going on, we pulled his coat and we was like, "Yo, that's not a girl." So at first he wasn't having. He was like, "Nah, nah, nah, nah." He didn't believe us. But then when he realized it, back then we didn't have uh, trans women classification. Back then it was just TV, right? Transvestite. That's how we called them. So once he realized that it was a man and not a girl, for the rest of the night, he was like trying to wash out his mouth with straight vodka. He was just like he was going crazy. We were buying him shots and he was spitting it out and washing out his mouth, you know. But my man was that kind of a guy. He would F anything that moved, fat, skinny, pretty, whether she was attractive or unattractive, it didn't matter. To him, it was just sex. But that night experience, ironically, didn't change his behavior. He got married. He married a Latino girl, and he was a Latino guy too. So he had kids, and he continued with his behavior. Never curbed it at all. It got so bad that he would tell his wife he was hanging out with me when he really wasn't. And of course, his wife, she hated my guts because she thought I was corrupting him. The second story, I guess, happened about 10 years later when I got up in corporate America. I was working, downtown, and I was working with this Iranian guy. Well, we were in the same office, same company. And he came from a very wealthy family. And this guy was straight up masculine. You would never think anything else other about him. And sometimes we would go out to lunch together. And if anyone know about New York, particularly Midtown or downtown Manhattan, uh, down by Battery Park City and stuff like that, at lunchtime, it's just crowded, all types of women, very attractive women walking around, black women, Latino women, white women, whatever your desire or taste would be, there would be women like that out there. So one day I was commenting on this particular body type of a woman that I found really attractive. And his response was like, nothing. So I was like, come on, man. You don't find her attractive? So we got into it for a minute, right? And then he was, yeah, she's attractive, but she doesn't really do anything for me. So I was like, really? I was like, come on, don't tell me you would throw out of bed. That's a phrase that men would say. And he was like, Lee. And then we started to have a real conversation. Then he began to explain to me, like, I'm from a very wealthy family. And what I'm about to say does not mean everyone from a wealthy family does this or do these things. But from what he told me, I would be surprised who it may or may not apply to. And he began to explain that from the age of 13, 14 years old, he was having sex with girls, women of all ages, teenagers, 20, 30 years old, whatever. And this is while he was still a teenager, 16, 17, 18, 19, not really a man yet, right? So as he laid out his life experience, he said there comes a time when the female body, a woman, does not really excite you anymore. It doesn't do anything for you sexually. And at some point, you start to experiment first with boys, young boys, 15, 16, then with men. And usually these things occurred at parties and social events, private events. And he said that at one point in his life, to him, there was no difference between a woman or a man. He goes both ways. And you could never tell by looking at him, by talking to him, that he was that type of guy. Unless he told you, there was nothing about his behavior, characteristic, or mannerism that would lead you to believe that he had sexual relations with men. And I mean, this man moved in every way that you would consider masculine. You would consider him that. And he made it clear to me that his preference at this stage of his life, and I was in my early 30s, so he was already starting to ball. So I would say he was in his late 30s or maybe early 40s. But his preference was for men more so than women. And that was the first time like I had a conversation with someone about that type of a lifestyle in such a grown up, matter of fact kind of a way. And as he continued to explain to me, many people that come from a very wealthy, rich background have had a broad sexual experience with women and men. Now, like I said, I'm not saying that all wealthy men do this, but from what he says, more so than not, have this type of experience. So after we finished lunch and we're going back to the office, you know, I thought to myself, I said, I hope I never become this rich, jokingly, of course. But honestly, I was like, I hope I never really become that rich, that I lose the desire to be with an attractive or beautiful woman in a sexual, loving kind of way. And this struck me for this topic because, I was remembering, 20, 30 years in my past and men that I've come across that had uncontrollable sexual desires. There was this other guy that I knew, and we worked together for a short time, but I couldn't keep company with him because his style of sex was just way out there. He was the type of guy that he loved pregnant women. And any woman that was pregnant, especially when she was showing, he would push up on them. And it got to the point so bad that I'm like, yo, we can't really hang out like that because sooner or later somebody gonna run up on him. And I don't want to be nowhere near when his justice come down. But I mean, in today's world, we look at, famous people, successful people. I remember back in the day, I heard about Teddy Pendergrass. I heard about Eddie Murphy. And even now we hear about certain type of rappers that they cross over. And I'm not just talking about their music per se. I'm talking about those who walk on the dark side, that thread between the lines of male and female sexuality. And then we also hear about the IG models that go to Dubai, and as I was writing out my dialogue for today, I reflect back on the conversation I had, particularly with the Iranian guy, that so many Arab men, they behave as though They're no longer really turned on by a natural woman in a natural way. I mean, we all hear about the IG models who go to Dubai for encounters with Arab guys, not necessarily for sex, but for sexual acts. From the reports that we hear, it's for anything but sex. So is it obvious that some men would pay 30, 40, $50,000 to a woman to have some of the most physically attractive women come out and be with them, but they don't want to have sex with them. Instead, they have this perverse behavior, lewd sexual encounter that usually don't include physical penetration of sex, but some other sort of stimulation for them, right? Because it's the stimulation for the man, particularly if he's paying for it, right? That they no longer are sexually attractive to women. I think not. That in the normal sense, a man could have so much sex over his lifetime that at some point the physical the physical attractiveness or the things that would normally stimulate you in a male female relationship, you know, somewhere in your brain gets burnt out because we hear about so many men today who have side piece, right? They have a wife, but they also have a side piece. And you hear men openly discuss that there's certain things that they don't want to do with their wife, but they do it with their side piece. Their side piece is the one where they can be totally open. They can be themselves. But with the woman that's their wife, the woman that's for sure, the woman that's for the public, for the eyes, she's just to be the mother of your children. But you can't really be the man that you are with her.